Hello, I am Cadet Major Andrew McQueen, and I am the commander of the Jackson County High School JROTC. I want to welcome each of you to the Jackson County 2020 Patriot Day Remembrance Ceremony, presented by the Jackson County Army JROTC. Patriot Day was signed into law on December 18 as Public Law 107-89. On September 4, 2002, President Bush used the authority of the resolution to proclaim September 11, 2002 as the first Patriot Day. Patriot Day commemorates the lives lost during the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001. Early in the morning hours of September 11, 2001, 19 hijackers overtook 4 commercial airliners departing from 3 separate airports. 2 of those planes intentionally crashed into the north and south towers of the World Trade Center, and another plane crashed into the Pentagon, and another plane believed to be en route to the White House was overtaken and crashed in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. 2,974 people lost their lives on that day. That total includes 2,135 civilians, 372 non-U.S. citizens from 77 different countries, 343 firefighters, and 71 law enforcement officers. Among the dead are brave first responders, resolute members of our military, and ordinary Americans who show tremendous courage while saving the lives of others. Each year, we celebrate Patriot Day to honor these brave men and women that died during that harrowing attack. Like many of you watching today, I was born after 9/11. I have grown up honoring the heroes of those who sacrificed so much on that fateful day. My generation has only known a wartime America. What I don't know and what I cannot fathom is what life was like in America prior to that first airliner striking the tower at the World Trade Center on that day. Hopefully in this program we can learn from those older than us how that day changed America, how our lives have changed since then, what it is like to have an enemy attack you here on our soil where we should always feel safe.
Set. Hold. Up. Hold. 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 Left. Left. Turn 5. Hey. Hey. Up. Hey. Up. Hey. Up. Ceasefire. Right. Reset. Hold. Order. Hold. Fall out. Pillars. Post. Face. Forward. March. Face. Order. Arms. Up. Face. Post. Get out. Spin flag. That's the flag. Arms. Order. Arms.
Okay, so you can give me the story of where you were and what happened.
Okay. I remember exactly where I was. It was on a Tuesday, a beautiful blue, clear sky day. At that time, I was getting a new driver's ed car every year from London. There was a dealership up there that furnished us a new car. And I would go get it in the fall and take it back, and they'd sell it in the spring and give us another new one in the fall. And I was getting a new Dodge Neon. And I was on my way to London. And I remember it was just like I said, it was a beautiful day, had the windows down, had the radio cranked up like I always do. And they came over the radio and said there's been a terrible accident they said a plane just hit one of the Twin Towers. And a lot of people don't know that, but they at first thought it was an accident. And then they were, it's news on the radio talking about that. And then by the time I got to London, the second plane had hit. And then they figured out that it was actually something intentional going on. And I just remember all the panic on the radio that day. They were just, a lot of people were on there saying that it might have been a part of a bigger attack, that the planes hitting the buildings might have just been a distraction to distract us from some larger attack coming. And I remember grounding all the planes, and it was just a really strange time. So a lot of brave people that day in New York and all over the place that day dealing with all that. And I just remember how much it's changed the world. Before 9/11, if you flew on a commercial plane, you could just see the pilots up there. If you had a front seat, you could sit there and watch them fly. There's doors standing wide open. Now they have, of course, security doors and things like that. And it just changed the world a whole lot, a lot of different ways. One thing that really hit me afterwards was when the smoke cleared and government officials at the White House and so forth sat down. They had all the information to see it coming, but nobody was talking to anybody back then. The president wasn't talking to the FBI. The FBI wasn't talking to the Secret Service. The Secret Service wasn't talking to the CIA. And when they sit at the table and started comparing notes, if they'd just been talking to each other, they would have seen it. And now, of course, we have Homeland Security that's linked everybody together. So their information's shared, but they weren't sharing anything back then. It took forever to even scramble fighter jets to even get up. They didn't even have fighter jets that were fueled with weapons on board that could take the planes down if they needed to at the time. And it just completely caught us off guard.
So you were a school teacher at the time?
Yes.
How did that affect your job as a school teacher? I
didn't notice a whole lot here. I noticed a whole lot of the mood of the kids had changed a whole lot. But I didn't really, we talked about it in class a lot, the causes of it and so forth, and the hijackers and what would lead them to do that. But I didn't really notice a whole lot of change around here from it that I can remember.
Directly prior to the attack, what did you expect the future to be like? Did you expect this to be a war or anything like that?
I didn't see anything like this coming. It just, no, I didn't. No one was really expecting any kind of a war or anything like that. No, I didn't really see anything. No. It was just a very peaceful time, and like I said, we had completely let our guards down. I mean, we had aircraft that weren't even armed, that were just sitting, not fueled, and we just really, no one foresaw, any type of an attack, especially on the homeland like that.
What kind of personal emotions did you have after the attack?
Well, it just made me think of why they would do this. How could someone, attack and kill women and children and civilians and people like that, going to work? And I, immediately, I just, like everybody else, I think I wanted revenge. Let's figure out who it was and go get them. And you want to punch back. You feel like you got to punch back. And sometimes if you're, the way we got hit, it was hard to know who to punch. But we need to punch somebody. And I think that's what we did.
This has been an excellent interview. I think you have a very unique view on everything, being a pilot and being a school teacher. Are there any closing remarks you'd like to have?
No. I think it's there's a part of me that wants to remember this, and there's a part of me that wants to forget it. And a lot of times, every year we talk about it and everything, but it's almost, I kind of just want to forget it too. It was just a punch, and I just you just don't want to think about it too much. But I do think it's important for us to remember what happened so that we can keep it from happening again. Anything like this.
9/11, what you remember? Everybody says they remember 9/11.
I do. I was a sophomore here at Jackson County High School. Over at the old high school, I was in Regina Flinchum's English class. And it was just a regular day. We were there going through regular routines of a classroom. And all of a sudden another teacher came down the hallway, knocked on the door and said, "Turn on the news." And I can remember she ran over to the old TV cart and flipped it on, and one of the towers had already been hit. There was talk about another plane flying into the Pentagon. Everything was mass confusion. We were watching, just trying to figure out what was going on. Nobody really understood. They thought it was a mistake at that point that a plane had accidentally flown into the towers. And then I can remember sitting in that classroom and I watched as the second plane hit the other tower. You could see people jumping from the towers right there on the news. It was terrifying. It was confusing. We had no idea. And by the end of the school day, they had linked it to Al Qaeda. The boys in my school were talking about enlisting into the armed forces, and that there was fear of the draft. Classes were pretty much canceled that day. We were still at school, but everybody was so confused and concerned. There was a gas shortage on that day because everybody immediately took their vehicles and bought up all the gasoline in the county. It was the one time in history that I can remember that Greg Parrott actually canceled girls' basketball practice.
How did it affect people in Jackson County specifically?
Well, I touched on, there were a lot of young boys that I went to high school with were afraid of being forced to be enlisted. There were a lot of people that volunteered to enlist. There were a lot of reservists that were called up to come serve. It was before 9/11. Doing if you were going to college or decided to enlist in the reserves, pulling your 2 or 4 years that you had to serve, it wasn't a big fear because you usually got sent to Germany or just somewhere to pull a duty. And then after 9/11, every parent, every mom cried. Just because, they knew that their son or daughter was going to have to go serve in a war zone. And that hadn't happened before 9/11 because, like I said, we were in a time of peace. You could walk your significant other or your family right up to the gate. If you watch movies from the 90s, people said goodbye at the boarding gate. And then all of a sudden, post 9/11, you have to say goodbye at the door as soon as you get your ticket. Well, check your bag, see you, and then you go through this security. And security became extremely, extremely tight after that. Before it wasn't. It wasn't a big deal. You just went up to the gate, got on the plane. Now now you have to be X-rayed, and if your pants are too saggy, they'll ask you to tighten them up, or they could pull you over and do a quick scan or search. My mom was actually on an airplane that landed the day after 9/11. So as soon as that happened, the first thing I did was sneak out of class. Nobody had cell phones. Very few people, cell phones were just being introduced, but I had one. Snuck out of class, went to the bathroom, and I called my mom and asked when her plane was supposed to take off because she was supposed to leave that afternoon. And she wasn't on the she wasn't going to be flying in that area, but it was mass chaos for her to board the plane that day with the confusion. They didn't even know she was in Aruba. They didn't know if she was going to be able to fly back from Aruba into the United States, even though that wasn't that far away, just because airlines were shut down and all those kinds of things. So life changed a lot after 9/11.
Do you have any closing statements that you'd like to address?
The biggest thing that I've learned from 9/11 is that no matter what plans that it's always important to make plans. It's always important to have goals, but it's also important that we learn from mistakes, and then we also have to understand that, and even through this pandemic, that plans can change, and we've got to be okay with that. We've got to adapt, and we've got to continue to do good in the world, even though that the world seems to be a bad, dark place at times, even though that sometimes, especially in this pandemic, that we seem alone. There were a lot of times in 9/11 that a lot of people felt isolated and alone. But we're never alone. And we've, God is always with us, and we always have to make sure that our light shines even in the dark world.
On September 11th, 2001, before the attack, where were you and what were you doing?
On that day, I was running some equipment, digging a basement.
How did you find out about the attack?
My wife then come up to where I was at, and she told me that a plane had hit one of the World Trade Centers, and that's how I found out about it.
What was your initial reaction to the attack?
Well, after she told me, I went to the house and started watching TV, and at first I got there before the second plane hit, so I thought it was just a accident, just a very unfortunate accident.
If you were employed at the time, did the attack have any effects on your job?
I was employed, but it definitely had an effect on me. But the job I had right after 9/11, I ended up getting hurt and went back to college, and that's when I was able to, I guess, put some type of action to what 9/11 done to me. I went to college and studied Homeland Security.
Did the attack have any effects on your home life?
Yeah, I think it did everybody. I mean, we felt safer before 9/11, and then I think because it wasn't, normally these kind of attacks are on our military or on a military base or something like that. This was against civilians, and I think it kind of shocked everybody.
Did the attack change any previous thoughts or opinions you had?
Yeah, I think most everyone thought we were safer than we actually were, and then when this happened, it made us realize that we're a lot more vulnerable than we thought we were.
How did the attack affect you emotionally?
It was devastating. I mean, you're looking at all the civilians that not only died, but they were trapped for some time. It was on TV. Their family, their loved ones was watching it unfold. A lot of people had family on the planes. Just imagine what those people were going through, what the first responders, the firemen, policemen was going through. It was awful.
What did you expect the future to be like before and after the attack?
Before, I mean, it was just, I think people get, if it's not in front of you as an American, you don't really think a lot about it. I think, our military and other people in that line of work, they're used to stuff like this, or they see stuff like this. So after it was over with, then I think it made America just realize, this can happen at any time. So it changed. I think it changed a lot for a lot of people.
You said you went into college for Homeland Security.
Yeah.
How did that affect your future job?
Well, that's 9/11 is the reason I started Homeland Security. I know that there was tons of people right after that went in the military and different things, and I thought this way I could do something. Actually, the day 9/11 happened, I called and talked to someone and told them I was a heavy equipment operator, and I volunteered my time to come up and help if they needed, but they said they thought they had, it sounded like hundreds of thousands of volunteers if they need them. So, but I mean, it just changed. I wanted to do something because of 9/11, and I guess this is what I chose.
How did the attack influence the position you're in today?
It's, I guess, in a very small local way, not on a regional, state, or federal level, but in the local level, I guess it would kind of give me an opportunity to, which I don't think it would ever happen here, but you never know, it just gives me a way to be around people who is in this type of work and who knows more and can kind of, I guess, give me an idea of what's going on, you know, in the rest of the United States and in Kentucky.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
On September 11th, 2001, before the attack, where were you and what were you doing?
The year that the Twin Towers fell, I was post commander for the Kentucky State Police at London at the time. And I was in my office doing some paperwork, and I recall one of the troopers that worked in the office come in and said, you need to check the TV out. There's been a terrible accident. And so I went into our break room and I was watching the TV, and I saw the damage from the first plane crash that hit the tower. And I thought to myself, what a terrible, horrible accident that's just happened. And I thought, this is just terrible what's happening. So I knew enough about it to know that there were thousands of people in those buildings. So it was concerning to me the number of people who had died just from that first crash. And as I was sitting there watching it, the second plane came through and hit the second tower. And my first and immediate thought was, we are at war. That was my instant thought. We're at war. Because once I realized it wasn't an accident but an intentional act, I realized that the world that we knew it, and as we knew it, was forever changed. It really shook me to my core. And you know, the first thing one thinks about in those things is, how's this going to affect my life? How's this going to affect my family? How's this going to affect those people in that building and the emergency workers who were responding to that call? I could see firemen everywhere going toward the fire. I could see police officers that were helping people and that were going back in. And I could see people running that were covered with the dust from that terrible tragedy. And I thought how horrible this is for those people. And you know, those kinds of things makes us thankful that we are in a little bit more isolated area where we don't have the congestion and we don't have the potential threats that they have in New York City, because that's a whole different world than what we live in. Totally, completely opposite of what we live in. So we had there was a lot of things that went through my mind that day, but my main concern was, how is our country going to survive such a horrible attack that's come to our country?
Did the attack have any effects on your home life?
I think it affected every home life, because all one has to do is sit and watch TV and see those tragedies, and that affects everybody. I learned one time that you can never go through a major stressful situation without it having an impact on your life at some point. Maybe not instantly, it could be a long time after the fact. But still, that does affect people. A lot of people, you know, suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of circumstances they respond to. Major incidents where people's lives are taken, or accidents where people are really injured seriously or maybe killed. And you know, all you have to do is remember the people who died in that terrible, terrible fire, and when the building collapsed, and think about all the lives that were lost. Civilian lives, police lives, firefighters, and other emergency services that were lost during that event as they were trying to help save the lives of the people who remain inside. That leaves scars that people have forever. You never get past those things. And every time something happens that is traumatic, it reminds us of that. Ironically, the things that are so tragic also bring about a realization of what a blessing we have to live in our country and to live in such a place where we don't give up and we don't quit fighting, that we continue the battle, and that we don't surrender to people who would try to destroy our country. We never surrender to that. And so we were changed forever. It affected my family because it affected me, and it also affected my family because of the things that they had to watch.
Did the attack change any previous thoughts or opinions you had about something like that?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean on that, but it didn't change my opinions of people, because I don't care what color your skin is, what nationality you are. There are great and wonderful people in every culture. Not everyone would want to kill us just because of who we are, but there are some. It is not the normal, average people in those countries. It's those radicals who do things that were horrific that I have a low opinion of. And so it didn't change my view on the general public. I don't treat people any differently than I did in the past. But we have to be aware in the world we live in today that there are radicals out there. And they could be Caucasian, they could be African American, they could be Indian, they could be any culture. It is the radicals in this world that we have to be concerned about, not necessarily the person based on their culture or their skin color. It is only those that are warped in their views to the point that they would bring harm to somebody because they believe differently than they believe.
How did the attack affect you emotionally?
As I said earlier, it was a very stressful thing. It was a shocker. It was a major shock when I first realized that we were being attacked by a foreign terror organization. It did shock me dramatically. It caused me to be concerned for the people that we serve in our local area. And so there was a stress level that kicked up as a result of that. And we had meetings, and I had meetings in Frankfurt. We had meetings with our own officers and our own personnel. There was a lot of people that were concerned. Some, different people handle stress different than others. Some people actually get to the point where they can't, it's difficult for them to function because of stress. Other people are able to control that stress level and function, but they're still scarred from it. And I think most of the police officers that I know and most of the people that I deal with were like myself, in that we were all emotionally distraught, but we were able to continue on and function because we knew we had to do that. And the scars that many of us have today from a lot of different tragedies that's occurred in our lives are things we have to carry. But we continue to do our job and serve the public because that is what we signed up to do. And we're not going to back up on that.
We appreciate you for coming out and taking time out of your day to do this interview, and that's all.
All right, thank you.
On September 11th, 2001, before the attack, where were you and what were you doing?
Yes, that's a good question. So I was in Omaha, Nebraska. I lived in Omaha, Nebraska at the time, and I was actually doing my pre-interview for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So I had applied for a job with the U.S. Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Prisons, which is the largest federal law enforcement agency in the Department of Justice. So I was actually at a federal prison camp in Yankton, South Dakota at the time of 9/11.
How did you find out about the attack?
So, back in those days, you didn't have social media like you have now. You don't have cell phones and things of that nature. So I was actually doing the drug testing portion of the pre-interview when the nurse that was at the facility doing the pre-hiring employment process said that a plane had hit one of the Twin Towers, and they saw it on ABC News. And so originally everyone thought that it was an accident. I mean, it was a horrific accident, obviously, but it seemed a little bizarre to think of it as an accident. How's a plane run into, a building of that nature? But originally, it just kind of stunned everybody, but I don't think anyone had any clue or idea that this was a coordinated, terrorist attack initially when it came out.
Was there a certain point at which you realized that it was an intentional attack?
Yeah, when the second tower was hit. When the second tower was hit, I think that everybody was like, wow, this was not an accident, that this was a terrorist hit, or at a minimum, something very wrong. I mean, at that time, you couldn't say it was a terrorist hit per se. You didn't know if this was foreign. You didn't know if it was domestic. You didn't know any of those things. But when that second tower hit, we knew that, I think a lot of us thought we were at war, that this was a surprise attack from an enemy. But when the second one hit, I think that's when the world stopped turning for a lot of us.
So what was your initial reaction?
I think it's kind of, I think it's been kind of overstated by some, or maybe people, people have said the same thing, but it's not overstated. And I think it's true is there's very few times in my life, and I'm 45, I'm not young. I've been in the military, I've, been in law enforcement, I've worked for the government 22 years. I've seen some stuff, working in, I was security police in the Air Force. I was, been in federal or civilian law enforcement for about 22 years. So I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of things that shock you, that kind of, trigger an emotion within you. But when people say literally the world stopped turning, I think Alan Jackson, I don't listen to country that much, but I like that song. I like Alan Jackson. He's good people, you know what I mean? And he said, where were you, when the world stopped turning on that September day? Is a lyric borrowed from a song he wrote about it. Literally, that's what it felt like. The world stopped. I've seen tragedy before. We've been through things before, even in my lifetime. But literally, the world stopped. It was just like time stood still, and we were just all shocked. How could this happen to, the strongest nation in the world, with the strongest military in the world? With, at that time they actually respected law enforcement. I don't know what's happened now, but it was shock. It was just absolute shock, and that ripple effect carried over through, I think, everybody in the country, from New York to California, from, Maine down to Texas. Just shock.
Did the attack change any previous thoughts or opinions you had?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think it did. I think it challenged the notion that America is invincible. I think up until that point, our military was so strong. We were so insulated from feeling like something like that could happen to us. The thing about it was so shocking from the standpoint that you have to think about what went into coordinating that kind of event. You have to overtake a plane. You have to know how to fly a plane to hit that kind of target. So I think that it really challenged the fact, because up until that time, most of the stuff was not in our country, right? It was, we're going overseas. World War II, we're pretty much going overseas. You did have some things that affected, here stateside, there are some mortar shells and stuff like that from Japan on the West Coast that hit our country. But for the most part, the continental U.S., we've been able to kind of develop this sense of, you can't hit us here. Our bases are lined up on the West Coast and the East Coast and the North and the South. So for something like that to happen in our backyard in the continental U.S., it was shocking, and something that was, I think it challenged the fact that we're not invincible. It can happen. And then when you take the other plane, what other people don't talk about is the Pentagon, when the plane, flew into that. And my mom, she cut hair at the Pentagon for the military. And so, it was just, you didn't feel as safe and confident in the fact that we felt vulnerable, I should say. So yeah, definitely challenge that.
What did you expect the future to be like before the attack?
I mean, I think pretty much as we went along, you know, I mean, there was no Department of Homeland Security. There was no, you know, y'all would never, I mean, you know, it would amaze you, you know, you just went to the airport, you got on your plane. I mean, there was no security, there was no TSA, there was no, I mean, you might have had a couple of, you know, people that, you know, would check your tickets or something like that. But I don't think any of us thought, I just think the future was, you know, at that time, people, you know, you had the kind of the American dream. You get married, you have kids, you get a good job, you take care of your family, you raise them, you go to church on Sunday, you be a good citizen, you retire from your job, and then you just enjoy your grandkids, and that's it. That day changed everything as far as security. You know, we didn't have video cameras all around. We didn't have, I mean, and now, I mean, you can't go anywhere without a video camera. You can't go anywhere without security being, you know, a top priority. It was just different. You know, I'm not saying it was better, it was just different. So I think people are more aware, and it caused maybe a little more awareness, and people taking their own personal safety and security a little seriously. And, you know, I think our world at that point was less skeptical of each other. You know, really, I mean, when you know, we made a lot of progress racially that I think we've regressed on now, which is crazy. You know, we kind of were getting to a point where I think Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words of, you know, we don't judge the color of someone's skin, but the content of their character. So our society was really evolving from the standpoint that, you know, it didn't, you know, if you're black, white, red, yellow, whatever it was, we tried not to stereotype. There was peace, there was harmony. Not saying that you didn't have some of those issues, but I think we just saw more of an advancement of peace and harmony amongst each other, and a greater unity, you know. And that day just kind of, like I said, you know, changed everything. And quite frankly, New York City's never been the same. Even in their redevelopment of that city, they've never been the same. They've never fully recovered from that, especially some of the things that they allow now. So, yeah, I think before we just thought we lived the American dream. They may have accomplished on some level what they wanted. If they wanted to create division, you know, if they wanted to create a recession, you know, we had a recession in about 2000 to 2008, not long after that. If they wanted to create skepticism amongst our own country and not be united in some degree, I think they probably accomplished what they wanted, because we haven't been the same. I don't know, in some ways we have gotten better, but in some ways we're more fragmented and more divided in some ways than you know, we ever were. You know, I'll never forget the most poignant moment in that whole thing is when the President of the United States, and it didn't matter if you were Republican, Democrat, Independent, it didn't matter. When he stood on that burning rubble and said, you know, I get a little choked up, man. It didn't matter. Like, you know, when President Bush, didn't matter if it was President Clinton, it could have been President Obama, it didn't matter, you know. When he stood on those Twin Towers, man, in light of seeing your brothers and sisters jump out of things, and he stood on those Twin Towers and he said, you know, I don't cry, man. I'm a tough guy. I really don't do this. But when he stood on that burning rubble, man, and he said, I hear you. We hear you. And soon they will hear us. It was such a powerful moment. And it changed all of us.